3 exercises that you feel most help general fitness for a mountain biker. Is a bit of a broad, silly question, but I also think it's one that maybe a lot of our listeners, maybe they're thinking about getting into training. They want to do 3 exercises. What 3 would you put at the top of your list?
The first thing I put on the top of my list is actually, and it's going to sound stupid, is about riding your bike during the week. So whether that be on a stationary bike, whether that be going out after work, whether that be riding to work. Because a lot of people you speak to who are general population, who've got 9 to 5 jobs, they've got families, they've got children, they've got commitments, is they get that excited to ride their bike at the weekend. They don't do anything during the week to help them. Then they go out on the weekend and then they get frustrated because after an hour and a half, they're absolutely cooked. And they're thinking, well, hang on a second, how do I get more out of my weekend? And the way I'm looking at it is, how are you going to enjoy your weekend more?
That's a really good point. I don't think that's stupid at all. I think that's...
So...
Because the fitter you get, the more fun it gets.
Fact.
Yeah, and the way you can do that, so I think the best way to do that is have something at home to help you. Invest in yourself in some way. I've got a watt bike in my garage. As you can imagine, I've got everything I need, but I will often go in there after the kids go to bed and I know the heart rate I want to be at. I'll put my iPad on and I'll watch something that's going to be an hour long. And it's just so easy to tick it off. Yeah. It doesn't have to be at any intensity, really. It's something you can just sustain comfortably for an hour, and that will make a massive benefit. If you did that twice a week, you probably doubled your riding time for the week for a lot of people. Yeah. So I'd say that's definitely the first thing. The second thing in terms of exercise is I'd work on mobility, believe it or not, because a lot of people really struggle. If you watch them from behind, say you're going up the hill following somebody, you might well see their knee wobbling all over the place and everything upstream of that causing problems. And often that comes from the ankle. So if you've not got enough ankle range, it can often cause issue with the knee, which can often cause problems, or you're just not your position on the bike isn't very good. And sedentary lifestyles, people sitting in cars, on phones, all the rest of it. If you're on a bike for a couple of hours and you complain of a sore lower back, probably it's because you're super tight anterior hip. You've got no decent posture. So that's something that's easily rectified. YouTube videos, 10-minute, he sits up straight. Those things are all easily achievable. Yoga mat, my wife does 10 minutes every day, just, 10, 15 minutes.
I didn't think you were going to say that. It's very interesting. That's cool, yeah.
So I'd say that, one, if we're talking about enjoyment, ride a bike more often. Yeah. Mobility, and again, that gives you that self-assessment. Am I struggling here? Are my hips pinching? Are they sore? Because ultimately it allows you to do more riding and be pain-free. And then I would have a strength movement and I would have a deadlift or a squat in there, because they're sort of global exercises. A squat loads you sort of it's like squishes your spine, so to speak, which fires everything up around it. Really good stability, really good trunk, and directly translates to pedal power. So that's the way I do it. I wouldn't get carried away on trying to lift crazy weight, but I would be progressive with it.
Okay. So specifically, let's take each one. So you've done the bike for an hour. Mobility, it's just general work on it.
Yeah.
It's for something like a squat, let's say. Should people work towards 10 reps, would you say would be sensible?
Well, so what I often find is if you give a rep range of over 8, people never lift enough weight. They just don't put enough weight on the bar. So that's a big thing that I find is if I work to, say, 8 to 12 reps is hypertrophy, building muscle size, 9 times out of 10, when you see someone working within that rep range, they've got loads in the tank. There's loads left. And if you want to work to 8 reps, I want that 8th rep to be misery. Right. And you need 3 minutes of trying to get your life back in order and stop seeing stars and be ready to go again. That, when I'm training an elite athlete, that's what we're trying to do. And I can work out the weight needed. There's some equations you can do when you know a 1 rep max or how much they can lift for this many reps. You can predict it relatively accurately. And sometimes they look at the program like, you want me to do this for this many reps? I'm like, trust me, you can. It won't be easy. You won't want to look at your phone between sets. You'll need to have a sit down and a reflection on life after it, but you can do it. And that makes you really, really strong. But if we're talking about rep range for your average guy, I'd actually lower the reps. I'd be down at 5 because the quality will stay. So you'll get more quality movement with more weight, and you can do 4 or 5 sets of 5. I would often do that for someone, because if you ask them to do 6, 7, 8, the quality goes, unless they've got really good movement patterns, you see them shifting into one hip. A deadlift for high reps is real dangerous if they start rounding their back. So I'm just trying to mitigate, make it safe, but actually make it progressive.
I think that's really good advice. It's cool. It's cool it coming from you, because I think probably the gym is quite intimidating for people, and they want to be better at biking, and they want to enjoy their weekends more biking.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned loads of different ways then that you could do a squat or a deadlift incorrectly. Could you do that with mobility? Can you be incorrect in your mobility work?
That's a good point. I would, if I was trying to work on my mobility, I would simply put into YouTube 10-minute yoga video. And that's what I would do as a starting point, because there's so many different ones out there, and you can't go far wrong with yoga movements, because 9 times out of 10, any mobility exercise I set someone, I remember doing some mobility that, just for myself, my wife walks in and goes, "Oh, that's Warrior 3," or "Oh, that's," and you're like, "Oh, really?" So it all sort of come from there anyway.
Okay.
So I think that's your best starting point. You can, if you want to explore these things a bit more, a physiotherapist is a great call, because they can start to maybe explain why some of these things are happening. Okay. But I'd say 90% of the time, you do something in yoga and you're like, you know what, my ankle feels super tight there, or you know what, my hamstrings are awful, or I can't twist that way very well because it pinches in here. And that reflection just means you can maybe, it motivates you to do a little bit more.
Do you work on nutrition too with athletes? Okay, so again, can we do something similar with the everyday person or everyday mountain biker? What should their diet look like?
I think it's what your diet looks like really is the things that you probably could eat less of. Okay, for a lot of people. I know a lot of my friends who drink alcohol during the week, and that blows my mind, because it's just taking on these calories that you're never going to expend. And normally it's indicative of something under, like, why are you doing that? Because I've got a real stressful job, or I don't like my wife, or any of these things, you need to strip down underneath that and understand why you're having those 3 or 4 beers in the evening. So alcohol's one of them. I'm not saying don't drink, but if you find people grazing on alcohol a lot, they probably carry too much weight. And secondly, I'd fuel for what you're doing that day. Okay. So if your day involves being sat in front of a computer, you do not need a lot of calories to fuel that day.
That's what's difficult, because if I was sat behind a computer, I would be more likely to eat more than if I was doing a massive bike ride. I'd eat nothing. I quite often forget to have lunch on a big day riding.
That's the cruel irony. If you're sat in front of the computer doing something mindless, you want a cup of tea and a couple of biscuits. Yeah. I don't blame you. I'm not saying don't, I'm not a monk. But so you can be a bit clever with these things. So protein is really good at filling you up. So if you have something with high protein content, so some unsalted nuts, for example, you won't need many of them until you feel as though you've had something. And that's probably quite a good way to do it. Carbohydrate people will often have way too much, but carbohydrate is not the enemy. And again, that's something that a lot of social media will portray, that carbs are evil and we'll just eat meats, and these fad diets, they do my head in, because if you think about why they're doing it from an aesthetic point of view, or they're trying to explain to you that cut out the carbs and it'll make you lean. But if you look at a Tour de France cyclist, those guys are taking on 120 grams of carbohydrate every hour, which is, you and I couldn't physically do that. We'd struggle to take in that much, and it would make us feel ill. Yeah. The reason why they're doing it is they're fueling their exercise. So it's just understanding, am I going out for a long ride today? Yeah, let's fuel it. Again, if you're going out for a 90-minute bike ride with your mates around Pease Lake, you don't need energy gels. You don't need caffeinated drinks. You don't need a bottle full of, energy drink or supplement or whatever. And because if you're burning 400 or 500 calories and you've taken in 400 or 500 calories, you're at net zero.
Net zero, yeah.
So what are you trying to get out of it? I think just a little bit of reflection. A lot of people, if they just wrote down everything they put in their mouth for 3 days on a note, they'll probably be surprised.
Yeah. Like, I've been doing it recently, just tracking.
Yeah. What did you find it interesting? Did something jump out at you as a good or a bad thing?
Just that for me, I need a lot more calories than I expected I would do.
Yeah, interesting.
Just to maintain.
Yeah.
So me, if I'm like between 3,000 and 3,200.
Yeah.
I stay the same.
That's interesting. That's quite high, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Which is quite. I mean, I do a fair bit, but I'm not like mountain bike guy who's constantly riding. I do enough.
Yeah. How do you find out what calorie intake you need?
How do you find? So the way I've done it is you just find what your base seems to be. So I've done it, and Alan's going to correct me here, but I basically used MyFitnessPal and started tracking everything you eat, and then you just literally see what happens to your weight.
Interesting.
So then I weigh myself every 4 days, and then it's like it's stayed the same. And I've noticed that the calories are between 3,000 and 3,200.
Yeah, interesting.
And then if you want to lean, you just drop that off, right? And if you want to bulk, you try and do more, but it's very hard to do more.
Well, it is.
It's really difficult.
Yeah.
Hence the sweet potato.
Yeah,
and the rice outside, trying to eat more.
This is it. So. And for athletes who are trying to get bigger, that's why it's hard to get big. Like this, putting my PE teacher hat on, it really stressed me out when I was teaching PE to 16-year-old boys and girls, is you'd open up this book and it would have strength, and underneath it would be a bodybuilder. And you'd be like, no. You know, you're correlating these two very different things together, and it's actually a really frustrating thing because immediately you're just pumping into this adolescent's head that strength equals big muscles.
Yeah.
When in actual fact, there's 100% chance that bodybuilder's on steroids anyway, and to get to that naturally requires so much protein intake, is very difficult, and a very committed lifestyle to it. Yeah. And it's not just the force of the muscle, you know, if you explain that. So that's something that, if you're trying to work with a pro rider and they're training 2-3 times in a week or in the gym, and then they're adding on all these other sessions, often they need to take in more protein, and their protein intake just isn't enough. So it's being aware of that. But it's understanding what's going on. Some people, if you've got this resting metabolic rate, everyone is slightly different. In the lab, the physiologists can work it out very, very accurately, and they'll actually have someone lie down and they'll put a mask on them, and they'll shut the lab and they'll put like quiet please, and basically you just try and have someone completely chill out, and then you can work out how much energy their body needs just to do these basic life maintenance tasks, and then you can scale that for the day, and then you can build up this program for that athlete and try and understand, you know, how best to help them.
Interesting. Yeah. What's your thought on some of the more like holistic approaches now? Like, say now, they've been around forever, but like cold exposure, heat exposure, do you build that into your athletes' training? Or
yeah, another good question.
Thank you.
Cold exposure is a really interesting one.
Hey man, what an episode that was. You did amazing in it.
And so did you.
You shone like a star.
You shone like a moon.
I shone like a focused spring deal.
Oh,
yeah,
beautiful transition.
Right, I've got a question for you, David, to kick this final advert off.
Yeah.
What would you do with up to €400 if you got it back when buying a bike?
Ooh, I could stay in the bike shop and spend my €400 on accessories.
Good point. Support your local bike shop. Great point.
I could take the €400 and go to another shop close by, maybe buy €400 of pasta, maybe go to the Euro store, get €400 and just... That's Christmas done for eternity.
True.
Just keep handing them out every year.
Lottery tickets.
Yeah, beans.
Tyres.
Chamois
cream.
A new pet.
A new pet. Perhaps a water dragon or an iguana. Lovely idea. Well, Focus are actually making that question a reality.
Nice.
Because with the Focus Spring deals, you can grab up to €400 back when buying a new bike. If you want to find out more, check out the terms and conditions and all of the details in the link. We're going to put that below, and I'm also going to read it out.
Please.
Okay, you ready for me to read it out?
Yes, I'm.
This is old school, innit? Reading out links.
Yeah, anticipation.
I'm going to do it anyway.
Please do it.
I'm doing it.
I want the deal.
Ride.focus.bikes/spring deals TRC.
Ooh, nice. So that is ride.focus.bikes/spring deals TRC, and let us know in the comments what you would do with €400. Best answer wins a signed ODub hat.
Oh, I like it. Good.
All
I've
right.
got hats. Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, I'm good for that.
Okay.
Hey, can we also put something up here that you can click on for the next episode?
How about we put a subscribe up there in the middle?
Yeah, I love
We're going to put a video we think that our lovely companionship will love on your face.
On my face?
Yeah.
And so they can't see me now?
Gone. And on my face, another video that we think people will love. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please hit like and subscribe. You guys are the best.
Peace and love.